like and subscribe. Gen Z, what are something you wish others better understood about your generation? Mod note, this post is about the experiences of people in Gen Z. Asterisk, please do not derail to tell them how your generation sees them, or what your generation thinks about this, or how your generation was the same or different. This is not about you, if you are not part of Gen Z. This is a space for them to speak. Respect that. Asterisk, stop derailing from responses by Gen Z to complain about other generations. It doesn't matter if you think boomers or millennials or Generation X or some other generation is causing the problem that person is describing. This is not the place for you to complain about other generations, or try to defend and deflect blame from your own. Listen to the responses being given to this question by the people from Gen Z. Please report all rule BREAKING asterisk asterisk. We didn't entirely grow up on technology like Gen Alpha. And it's not because of our damn phone, we are actually I'm depressed. I am Gen Z, and I am not depressed, because I grew up with a cell phone, but I absolutely think the access to information and constant media definitely contributes to my depression and existentialism. I have wondered what Gen Z thinks about those era the youth are depressed, because demon turn all or bio think piece articles. Feels very patronizing. And in the vein of era millennials kill X, Y, Z thesis written by boomers that millennials hate so much. I all have much to be depressed about. As someone who's either Gen Z or millennial depending on whichever chart you look at, I have noticed a lot of the younger people are depressed because the screen time usage. I wrote a few papers about this in college, but I do agree, I know there are truly kids / out there who are depressed. I don't think phone usage helps though. For what it's worth, as an elder millennial I really believe your generation when you say this. I graduated into a recession and things only seem to have got worse since then. That crash aligning with early adulthood was bad enough, I can't imagine spending my childhood and teens under this too. I didn't get the internet at home until my mid-teens and social media / smartphones only took off while I was at university. Yet folk over a certain age forget this, and act like everyone under the age of circa 45 has been welded to technology since birth. This is where I sympathize with Gen Z, because I've had it up to here with hearing about how millennials when really they mean anyone I perceive as young can't cope without the internet. I coped for most of my legal childhood without it. I'm sure Gen Z know how to do other things as well, because part of your life will have been prior to smartphones and also. Hello. Gen Z are not socially inept like certain people seem to think they are. Maybe we all have a bleak outlook because things aren't great, and quicker communication methods mean we are bombarded with it instantly almost every day. That's not a personality failing on the part of my generation or yours. Also, my nieces and nephews are all under 10 years old and still read physical books plus go outside to play. It's not all about tablets and phones. I would agree, but also constantly hearing about the next bad thing happening all over social media definitely isn't at helping my depression lol. Gen Alpha is gonna be worse than Gen Z. We can't look at life and the future in a bright light, because the previous generations ruined, over-exploited, the world for us, and now we have to make do with the scraps. I can't care about rich farts going to space when all of my friends are depressed, because the life prospect is a nightmare and the pandemic sure ain't making growing up easier. I'm 28 and I have felt like this since 2008ish. It's going to be okay. It's hard, but we will make it. Yup. I can't move anywheres, because we are in a housing crisis. Tuition keeps increasing. Gotta love my tuition increases, while being made to pay $800 for online classes. We are being pressured as consumers to be more environmentally friendly, when big companies are the ones to blame. I think about the future sometimes, and it's so overwhelming. Like, how do people succeed in a world like this? It's basically greatest generation struggles all over again. This is one of the uniting points for millennials and Gen Z emo. That the older generation, specifically boomers and Gen X, have completely screwed our future, while simultaneously telling us to follow in their footsteps. They need to understand that what they did when they were our age is simply not working for us. The economy is ruined, and we are gonna have to work until we die. Meanwhile we have these influencers who get rich quick just for being pretty or being teen parents. Regular people are treated like failures because we can't live up to our parents' expectations of us, which only adds to the stress of living. Most of our generation is depressed because we know our futures suck. It's not that it isn't working. It's that it simply isn't even possible. We aren't making nearly as much money as they were due to circumstances outside of our control. The lives they were able to have aren't even attainable for most of us. Owning a house and having a family on the single income of someone who didn't even graduate high school? That just isn't possible for us. Exactly, buying a house today is not as easy as it was back then, for example. That our generation has to pay for what older generations started. They started using polythene and plastic that is now impossible to get rid of. The petrol and diesel prices are skyrocketed. The planet is dying, and we could have saved it if we would have taken steps few decades earlier. Now we are criticized and shamed when we show our emotions. The population burst is because of older generation. Now we have to fight even for human rights and low wages jobs. We are depressed because they think we can achieve everything from study and hard work, but it's not true now. We put lots of effort, but still don't get the job because of the population problem. They have normalized the abuse and violence in household that is taking a toll on us. They have normalized toxic masculinity and patriarchy system. They have literally ed up our generation, and when we stop showing our emotions, or standing for rights, they silence us, by saying we are too sensitive and ill-mannered. I see it all over social media. Every time Gen Z makes a video or post, to raise awareness of something, older generations will swarm the comments calling us snowflakes and too sensitive, because we don't tolerate hitting children to discipline them, and we care about the environment. Deep. If you complain about us, please realize we are a product of the world you made. Every time people complain our generation is weak, because we grew up getting a participation trophy, so I remind them it was boomers and Gen X who gave us those lol. I am really worried about my future. It feels like having a good job, retirement, and a house is a pipe dream that I can only hope for. I have done everything right, paying off loans, working hard, but it seems like it is futile. I'm an older millennial, and this really seems like the difference between us. My generation had those dreams when we were younger only to be shown that they were impossible to achieve, while yours didn't even get the pleasure of the dream. I'm 22 and nervous that I'll never move me and my cat out of my mama's house. I just want a stable career and a decent place to live. We are not asking for a lot. I'm an older Gen Z and going to grad school. I feel fairly certain that I can get a good job because I've worked my off to have a bunch of skills and experience both in my desired field and in transferable fields like computer programming and data analysis. But when my partner and I talk about the future, all I feel is dread and fear about having a family, or buying a house, or being able to retire. I don't know that we'd ever be able to buy a house or retire, and we both really want kids, but I also don't want to bring kids into a climate change hellscape. The current heat wave in the Pacific Northwest, it's getting above *110 today and tomorrow, and it's only June, has me extremely worried. Literally my only dream is to work a job that doesn't kill my soul, have a small house where I can grow a garden, and have a couple kids, and be able to provide for them, and that feels like a pipe dream. OMG, same. Live in the present, enjoy the small things. As a 30-year-old, this feeling just gets worse every year. And what kills me is that, if my partner and I were starting out in the 70s and 80s like our parents did, on our income we would have that nice house and such. Objectively we have pretty good incomes, but everything is so inexpensive we can barely afford our apartment as is. And unless something changes drastically, we are stuck like this. Phones and technology is actually fantastic, and helped us when we were alone, and had nobody else to talk to, or relate to us. This is so refreshing to hear. Covered expose the best parts about modern technology, remote school and work, artistic collaboration, TikTok, gaming, keeping in touch with loved ones, etc. I hope Gen Z catches a lot less flack about technology in the future. I'm in my N20s, man. Like, I get it, you were born 2 years before me, and that makes you the much better millennial, but we literally have the same advanced degree and work in the same office. Sorry I didn't catch Fresh Prince when it was on air, but there's functionally no difference between me, as an older Gen Z and a young millennial. I feel like the oldest of any generation feels like that. I am born in the second year of the millennials, and we were on for decades. Ultimately, generational conflict is mostly manufactured to distract us from our class solidarity. Our two generations could completely destroy the wealth structure in this up society, if only we could organize an actual general strike. Instead, you're being treated like children, and we're sad that the way we part our hair somehow makes us uncool. This is how I feel about late 90s kids as someone from 2000. Just because Gangnam Style came out when you were 14, while I was 12 does not mean we had wildly different childhoods. Edit. I just wish more people understood that time is continuous and not categorical. I was born in 1995, and I don't even know where I belong. There are several macrogenerati that make more sense to me than these big 20-year groups. I belong to one called the Argantrilo macro generation. Spans the end of Gen X and the beginning of millennials. Encompasses only about 7 years. We survived a childhood of mass school shootings, and held some degree of fear to go to school every day. I was actually talking with a friend and we both laughed about how we were scared to leave the classroom to use the bathroom in case of a shooter. I think partly why we care so much about politics and social justice is because our childhood was filled with it. Being told we were the generation that needed to reverse climate change. We are traumatized. I'm a psychologist who works with a lot of people who are college-aged. There are a lot of people in Gen Z who feel perpetually unsafe in the world, and for good reasons. I was already in my 20s when mass school shootings became a regular thing, and it was still scary to watch. I can't imagine being a little kid and watching that kind of coverage constantly. Gen X here, but I feel like school shootings were 9/11 over and over, on a smaller scale, but a more real feeling and chaotic threat. I was changed after 9/11 in how I saw travel, and even reacted to airplanes overhead. Life was different after 9/11, and they say people changed in their DNA. I feel like being a student now is essentially the same. Your perspective is just different, and I cannot imagine it. I don't know how kids go to school after doing active shooter drills. I flat refuse to do drills at my work because I feel like the drills themselves are traumatizing. My work toyed with bringing in a fake shooter, and I said they had no idea what they were doing. I would have quit. My school had an active shooter threat and we all had to just hunker down and pretend that everything was going to be okay for 2 hours. I mean like a full-on lockdown. Texting my family and loved ones to tell them I might not make it home. That day was unreal. And then we all had to finish up the school day like it didn't even happen afterwards. I am a parent horrors on the line between Gen X and millennials, and I cannot even imagine the trauma and fear that causes. Columbine happened the year after I graduated high school. I experience the current climate from the side of being afraid to send my kids to school, but I acknowledge it as nowhere near the same as what kids experience. For my generation, school was a safe place when home was not. It was a place of refuge for so many for 8 hours a day, and that has been stolen from future generations. Please know there are many of us just a generation removed who are with you in the fight for social justice and legislative change. Some days it feels so fruitless, but I have to hold on to the belief that real change is possible. My kids deserve better than what is happening now, and as a parent of biracial kids they definitely deserve better than what happened in generations past. I fear that I'll be poor for the rest of my life because older generations ed up the housing market, made college tuition prices skyrocket, so that most of us have no choice but to go into debt over it, etc etc. Also, I am tired of hearing them complain about birth rates declining. None of us can afford to have kids, plus we don't want to bring them into a world that has already been messed up for us. If you want birth rates to go back up, have them yourself. If they did, Thea'd complain about those kids as well. 29-year-old here. Go to community college to get your general education requirements done. Then transfer to a 4-year. That is what I did, and I saved a hell of a lot of money in the process. Also, I agree, I think anyone who has kids right now is selfish as hell. Unless they're wealthy or living in Scandinavia. I am Gen Z, and I am not depressed, because I grew up with a cell phone, but I absolutely think the access to information and constant media definitely contributes to my depression and existentialism. I'm a millennial, so I haven't lived y'all's life, but I always wonder how access to social media from a young age affected Gen Z. I was in college by the time social media and smartphones were widespread, so I imagine it affected me differently than someone who started using social media in middle school, or even earlier. The economy is ruined, and we are gonna have to work until we die. Meanwhile, we have these influencers who get rich quick just for being pretty, or being teen parents. Regular people are treated like failures, because we can't live up to our parents' expectations of us, which only adds to the stress of living. Most of our generation is depressed, because we know our futures suck. You know what sucks is, that a lot of those influencers were already rich to begin with. Yo. I'm an older millennial, and this really seems like the difference between us. My generation had those dreams when we were younger only to be shown that they were impossible to achieve, while yours didn't even get the pleasure of the dream. I am 20, Gen Z, and never had an inkling that I can afford a house in my early adulthood. My debts are packing on and the houses are all being bought by banks and companies to rent out. My only hope for retirement is that I can learn how to invest well, because I know I want to be able to rely on social security. I am constantly terrified that I'll need emergency medical attention, because it'll set me back so far. We have no safety nets. I'll be renting until I am dead. I'm a millennial, so I haven't lived y'all's life, but I always wonder how access to social media from a young age affected Gen Z. I was in college by the time social media and smartphones were widespread, so I imagine it affected me differently than someone who started using social media in middle school, or even earlier. Yeah, I read a ton of books as a child and teen, and I wonder how different it would have been if I'd had access to my own personal computer/smartphone at those ages. I definitely read a lot less once I got a laptop. Personally, social media contributed to my poor self-esteem, but it wasn't the cause of it. I already had friend problems without social media, but I started worrying about how many followers I had, being, or not being, tagged, and seeing everyone posting pictures about how much fun they were having with their friends. It was really damaging for 12-year-old me. That doesn't bother me as much now though. I've moved on to feelings of helplessness as I watch people in power doing the wrong things, and their citizens being punished in consequence. Really helps with the existential dread. Also, I'm pretty sure almost all girls my age have horrible body image issues, or at least insecurities. I ended up reading and studying things I actually enjoyed a lot more, because of the internet once I was around 12. Social media connected me to so many others like me, which helped make me feel like I wasn't alone and what I was learning was valuable and something I could do just because it made me happy, not just because it'll look good on my resume or because I could make money off of it. That said, a big motive for getting into obscure interesting on the net was just escapism. Life is loud, but it's like being in a box in the middle of a crowd. Everything is monetized, desensitizing, and more of information just breeds a lot of misinformation. Growing up we might have been more aware, but most of us are just exhausted from just life. Our parents tell us to get into a good college, but we know older graduates out of jobs, engineers applying everywhere and anywhere only to give up and work in places they clearly hate working at. You feel alone as a teen already, but there's this sense of not having a place in the world that I still feel now as a fresh adult. You're constantly bombarded with news, most of it terrible, and you feel guilty for taking a break. Even scrolling past a Twitter storm is debilitating. It feels as if the world has died, and we just don't know it yet. Of course my experience is not every Z's. I think we are neat, and that we'll be alright. I think we have it hard, we are depressed and disappointed but very funny. We are also going to die of global warming and nothing matters, so do what you can, and make that origami gander more strawberry boba for your friends from that tutorial on TikTok, cause life is otherwise.